psychiatrist.
Yeah, this is what it feels like. I went through 3 weeks of design training, and I feel like I'm giving therapy sessions to people I interview. How does that make you feel? Yeah, sorry. I haven't had tears yet, but yeah, design.
You don't have design people.
Yeah, pretty much. Sorry, what about yours?
Adrian.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'm Adrian, and I got a cityscape.
Cityscape.
So I'm not sure, maybe that's an indication of the sins I've committed by looking for the larger corporates or being here.
The sins.
Should I talk a little bit about my background? I think that's what you mentioned at the start.
Yeah.
People are.
Yes.
My career has been mainly in the large corporate environment, building statistical models for various groups, going forecasts and things like that. And the last 6 months I've set up my own consulting company. And I came up here to make contacts, but also to explore some of the challenges that this group's planning to do. That's a little bit about me.
What's going on?
But yeah, that cityscape did
Cityscape.
sort of fit in
Sin City.
my background.
Sin City?
That's right. The cities I've used.
Oh, jeez. We don't. You don't have to disclose anything. The camera's off.
No, it's back on again.
Oh, what?
Sneakily.
Yeah. Elise?
Okay, so my name's Elise Sue, and the card I got is of perfume and lipstick. And it just made me think of how we care so much about our appearance that we always judge somebody by how they look when we first meet them. And then it just makes me think, well, who really cares? Because I think there's more important things to think about, such as thinking about things which are going to impact like us or our families, or if you think about the environment, whatever really matters to you. So yeah, it just makes me think that there's more important things to think about rather than looking at someone's appearance or your own appearance.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Okay. Alex?
Well, I got a clown.
Great.
So I've learned how to be a clown in recent years, at least with some people. I've sort of gained the confidence to be a bit of a wise crack, or smart ass. And yeah, look, I've been through a lot of dramatic changes especially in my mental life in the last 7 years.
All right.
It's kind of like a relief. It was pretty hard going to find myself let loose, and I'm no longer subservient to a sort of magisterium. A bit like the church, right?
What was that? What was that last?
It was a different church, but not the Catholic. It was not the Catholic, but it was a different church.
Oh, right. Presbyterian one.
And so I'm still pretty pissed off about having lost so much of my life to that.
Hey, James.
But I feel like I've become heaps more intelligent.
Yeah, that's good.
And
That's good.
because I've been able to exercise my mind completely freely, and I've just done a heck of a lot of reading and thinking, and it's just and so I'm sort of still. I find I really want to know everything, and I find it very hard to specialise because I find to think.
Hard to specialise, yeah.
So I call myself a generalist, and or an integrator.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get the whole picture. You know? So transhumanism is just one part of it.
Yeah.
But don't know how that relates to a clown.
That's all right.
You
You don't have to. You don't have to play to the cards.
I take way out of a clown.
They're just to make you think. No, thanks, Alex. Gabriella?
Yeah, Gabriella, I got a pretty cool card, at least I think it is.
Ooh.
Target.
Yeah, proudly sponsored.
And I like it because it makes me think of focus. It's something that is very hard for me, at least.
This is hard.
So many distractions, so much instant gratification. I think focus is it's pretty hard. So I think at least at some degree it's hard for everyone nowadays.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Spend like days on Facebook.
Yeah.
How about you, Eric?
Well, I got Eric. got a traffic jam, and like.
What'd you get?
Traffic jam.
A traffic jam, right.
Like, first I thought the more literal meaning, then like the time wasted, lifetime wasted behind real. And, yeah, and then there is the fact that everyone is heading the same way, the other way is empty. Ooh. And that made me think like lost in creativity, you know, like how everyone does the same things, they follow each other, like a mass.
Yeah. Oh, that's deep. Jeez, these cards are powerful. So this is James as well, another James. I'll just draw you here, James, next to, on the other end of this picture. James, you didn't get a card yet. I'll give you one of these so you can share your thoughts. Just this guy's
inspiration time.
I know, right? No inspiration time from everyone else.
So what's this? A Vorsa?
This is yeah, I know. Oh, hey. Yeah, I will pick one. Yep, pick one. Yep.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, just introduce yourself as well. Introduce yourself as well.
Oh, look at that. I see an unfinished house.
Unfinished house.
Oh, the metaphors abound.
Right.
Unfinished house full of potential for somebody who's going to live there in the future.
Ooh, right. Full of potential? Yeah, and
food, water, warmth, shelter, everything Maslowian.
I think we're stretching the metaphors enough now. Right? Thanks guys for putting up with that.
I haven't begun to stretch it.
Oh, you haven't even started. Okay, right.
No, that's fine.
Just putting together, it's pretty last minute agenda, but I figured one of these workshops don't really do anything, so we did the intros just there. And I wanted to talk about transhumanism and get you guys to think about that. So yeah, so how does this all tie in with transhumanism and why you guys are here? Who'd like to start? For me, it's about allowing me to pursue a passion, because I think there's one of the biggest things is trying to stay healthy in life, and because if you enjoy it, then you're trying to extend that health span. And if I can just turn the dial a little bit towards research and development in biotech and health span extension, then maybe we can actually get there. But that's just me.
All right, I'll say something. Look, sometime between the next 20 seconds and the next 200 years, humankind is going to take a significant swan dive into an unknown future caused by masses of convergences of technologies. Primarily, we will move ourselves away from the means of production and other things will take over from that. So we will become economically useless, but hopefully still valuable in whatever sphere we are valuable.
Right.
So the point is, we are going to take that dive, and once you let gravity take effect, there's really not much we can do about it. The only time we can really affect that is now, when you're launching into your dive. So to me, transhumanism is a very necessary thing, because it's where we set our initial trajectory, which can have significant effect as the singularity, or whatever you want to call it, as this unknown future comes into being.
Yeah.
So I see transhumanism more than just a fluffy, oh, this is nice, let's watch all the funny gadgets come into existence. I see it as a necessary imperative that we think about it and we put ourselves on the correct path to a future, an unknown and much more powerful than us future.
Ooh, jeez. You didn't need a card for that, did you?
Metaphors, mate.
Yeah, no, the metaphors.
I agree. I think it's about us having a part in what will be our history. So having a say or having an impact or taking control of our future.
Yeah.
Well, personally for me, I'm very interested in longevity and health, so it translates very directly to transhumanism, but more rather on a micro scale, on a macro scale.
Yeah.
It's more about how can we have a say in what will happen to us.
Yeah, look, I'm similar to Peter. I, especially permanent. I don't want to ever lose my go. You know, I can extend my what you call health span along with my lifespan. That would be terrific. Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I do wonder. There are other things to take into account. I mean, James has said something I haven't really considered, and I don't know that I'm quite sure he's right. But especially given that, for example, in 200 years' time, the sea level will have risen 4 meters because of the fact that there's a huge piece of 20,000 square kilometers block of ice that's carved off Antarctica, which is now melting. And that's just the beginning of what's almost unstoppable now.
Yeah.
So the question then is, well, how many people can the Earth sustain after all that's happened? What are we going to do about it?
Following along on that line of thought, I'm actually probably here for a more selfish reason. Is that when I say more selfish reason, is that everyone seems to be like, yes, humanity, let's see where it continues. Where for me, it's like, well, right now, I'm actually really interested in just asking questions, asking myself questions about what does it mean to be human? What will we lose? Like, how do you say to somebody that you'll get to live your life forever, but you have to live in a box? You don't get to have hair, you don't get to have perfume and makeup, you don't get to do any of that. You just have to live in a box. Because the most important part of you is your brain. And other people will argue that's not true. And that's what makes me think of is, it's nice that everyone here seems to be interested in this topic, but what do you do when you go out and then you meet somebody who's not interested? And how do you convince them that if this is the actual swan dive and we're actually getting there, do we just leave you behind? Kind of like a fire warning. You're not actually supposed to tell people. You only have to tell them twice. If they don't want to leave the building, you leave them there.
Try going around old people's homes, seeing how many people are interested, right?
Yeah, right.
Having getting the misery reversed, you know, because it's not a fun life when you've got lots and lots of ailments and aches and pains, and you get sick every so often, you fall over often, you break bones easily, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part about bringing people along for the journey. I mean, you should offer it, and it's a nice thing to do for people. But ultimately, like, transhumanism is, like, from a health perspective, it's a medical procedure, right? Like, I mean, we're transhuman now because we're playing with these things. But once we get to implants and 3D printed body parts and all that kind of stuff, if people want to say no, you can't actually force them. You can't force someone to have their cancer operated on or anything like that.
Did you hear about that thing in the news about the 6-year-old whose parents refused to give them chemo and the state actually stepped in Victoria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's a bit different though, because
Why?
that's because it's a non-consenting, human being. Like, we have legal definitions about how old you can be before you make decisions, and we also have rules about how we treat children. And when it's considered like that it's child abuse, like letting a child die, that is child abuse, then like the state can intervene on that person.
The legislation about parental responsibility there, that's why intervention was necessary. Because they were looking for the benefit of the child as opposed to what the parents wanted for their child individually. So while you might choose a more holistic approach, if there's a chance to prolong the life of the child, the state or any government might see that differently as opposed to what parents do.
That's not recording, yeah. If you guys have any thoughts as well, like if you can't get a voice out, write on the post-it and just stick your arm out and post it up. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty good on what it is and why is it important. I think so. Does everyone have a good general understanding of what it is? In terms of what it's trying to achieve?
It'd be great if you explain it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I can just give a generalist point of view around it's the integration of human biology with technology. And so James was pointing to there's things like the cochlear implants, there's the pacemakers, there's things that people are putting in their hands now to do PayPass, and it's sort of the border between biology and technology is becoming closer and closer, right? So we're already glued to our phones, and soon we'll probably be able to connect to the internet through our brains, and that's the ultimate sort of transition that people might make. Do you want me to record that?
So it's always...
I was just pointing at the bottom half of everything
cool.
you're writing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Now it's all high.
Awesome.
It's always interesting when I think about transhumanism, because I actually started the Science Party as the Future Party thinking about all this sort of stuff. Like, we at some point, not too far in the future, maybe just out of reach, maybe just within our reach, we're going to have radically extended lifespan and all this kind of stuff. But I always felt when you look at transhumanism, like from a concept and how it is in culture on the internet, there's no real political directive. There's no like, this is what transhumanism is. Transhumanism is a definition, not a mantra for what you should or should not do.
Yeah.
So like, you're transhuman if you modify your body. You don't have to have a belief that the world should be a certain way, or even that it should be good.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an interesting one. When you look at what happened in the United States, Zoltan, the transhumanist presidential candidate, went out and started advocating for some really cool stuff. But he upset a lot of people who called themselves transhumanists because they were like, no, I don't believe that. And it's because in reality, it's such a broad area, like so many different people with so many different opinions about what it is to be transhumanist, but also like what the positive action is that you need to take to fulfill that. So.
And if I can just jump in, remember, people are not just one thing. A person has internally differing opinions. So you take your 6-year-old child who follows his parents, let's say 50% of that child, or 60%, is quite happy to do the will of their parents and die, 40% isn't. So that 60% is advocating for the 40%, which is being killed off.
Right.
We have this question, of course, with, anyone knows I'm involved in that sort of quiet cryonics organisation, Neural Archives Foundation, who've been freezing brains for the last 10 years. And we, of course, a lot of people say, look, would you freeze a person without permission? Now, of course, we legally cannot do that.
Yeah.
But personally, the simple fact is that if you can fix all the damage that's caused by the massive insult caused by freezing, you know, the death by 1,000, you know, ice crystals, which have basically expanded and ripped the brain apart, although the information is still in there, but it's a non-biologically functioning organism. Of course, if you could fix that damage, there's nothing to say you can't make the person who comes back want to come back, right? With a little bit of tweaking, you can recreate that individual so that certain parts of them are amplified. They still have all their own memories, but they sort of have different things. Now, we would not do that, but the question is that bad? Is it bad to enhance parts of a person who don't want to die, who do want to live, who do want to do different things, and subvert those areas that are saying, no, I'm going to make a decision now, this is my fate, let's die, let's stop.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because like, when someone presents at an emergency room, like, the doctors just treat them. You assume that they're gonna want to live, but the big problem is that there's actually no option to go, oh, hold on a second, I didn't want to live. Can you just like turn me off? Like, that's illegal. Like, and that actually gets into a weird sort of philosophical situation, because voluntary euthanasia, otherwise known as assisted suicide, like, when you say it as assisted suicide, which is what it is, it sounds really bad. But in reality, are people required to exist? Like, do we, as a society, do we go, okay, you should exist? Like, we think that your quality of life is high enough for you to be forced to exist? And like, under transhumanist situations, like, the potential to be actually living forever, you know, is very high. So even if you are a burns patient or something like that, you could come back to 100% life, but maybe you still want to die. Do we allow that? Like,
definitely, we forbid suicide for a selfish reason, because we don't want to lose people around us, and for tradition, right? Because religion and all, right? So that's gonna change. Like I said, when you live indefinitely, we'll get to a point that we will want to live, to die, right? And we should be allowed to.
Can I abstract it a little bit? You remember when Peter was talking about his plants? And the fact that he had to justify to us that he didn't kill the plants? Because he felt like, no, I'm just using it as an example, that you would be perceived as a bad person for killing your plants, right? And I feel like you're right, there's a selfish reason, but there is this really strong moral idea that we can't kill people. And I feel like that's, you're right, that whether or not that's good or bad, I don't know if that's, we say kill people, let people die? I'll use that as a let people die.
You're not killing.
Well, let the plants die.
Right. Look, I agree with that, and I think there's a much deeper thing here. I would put it that consciousness, the conscious existence, the inner experience of being, whatever you want to call it, is a necessary condition for morality. And I defy anyone to state a situation which has got a moral connotation where there is no conscious agency in existence. In other words, two bricks banging themselves together is not a moral event. It's only if there's some kind of moral agency somehow entwined with those bricks or affected by those bricks that we put a moral valency onto anything. So I would suggest to you that consciousness is an absolute moral prerequisite, a necessary condition for morality.
I wouldn't say agency though.
Oh, possibly.
You can still be conscious and not have agency.
I'm not saying it's a sufficient condition, I'm just saying it's a necessary condition.
No, I'm saying that if you cannot act, if you're existing as a conscious being but you can't act,
Yes.
like you have conscious experience, that you can imagine a situation.
But I'm saying it's still necessary, but it's not a sufficient condition. You may have to have potency to be able to do something. But that's aside. But I think you could give a very good case to say that consciousness is an absolute good and therefore should be preserved at all costs.
At all costs? Even all
That doesn't follow from what you
At
said.
all costs. I think it's the highest moral thing.
Are you grouping subconscious with conscious? Because most people I know just run on automatic. There's no conscious thought whatsoever.
No.
And they are still moralistic because it's automatic.
How do you know they run on
Because you ask them and there's nothing in there.
Some of their feelings are automatic.
Exactly. Can I just point out, are there men in this room? But you have things that move without you thinking about it? Just saying? Like, is that subconscious? I don't know.
Is it
There's
moral?
no problem with the existence of the subconscious and a world, but I just say that the moral valency is the conscious experience. The subconscious experience is fine. It's fantastic. It's a framework on which we're built. It's a nice convenience mechanism. It tells us what to do when we're not sure, but it's not itself got any moral potency. That's what I'm saying.
Changing the subject slightly, just slightly. We're so indoctrinated to believe, democracy is so important. But I was watching all the American clips from last night, and you've got to admit, the vast majority of people haven't got a bloody clue what they're doing, do they? So just having the ability to think and be conscious isn't the same thing as making good decisions necessarily.
Well, anyone who does things differently from you doesn't know what they're doing, right? So.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's right.
And can I just talk about something semantic, Peter, as well?
Yeah.
You guys, there's quite a few of you here in the science party, you've made a really insightful decision to change your name recently because the name that you had was something that was a throwback to the 50s, I guess, when people used to hide under their tables when the bombs went off. And I think, I'm not suggesting you change it because I love the name, but I think the name transhumanism as well is a bit of a relic of a past era.
Yeah.
Because I think most people today, if you ask them what they think about having a cochlear implant or any of these other things, not only is it totally right on, but it's not a freaky, weird thing. But if you tell anybody I'm in the transhumanist movement, they think, get
the stigma, right?
away from me, don't share the lift with me.
Or the biohackers as well, right?
I mean, what happens if you call it instead something like the technology accelerator? I don't know, something like that. Like that's part of transhumanism. That's like from everything that everyone's saying. That's what people are really into, right? Like,
the merge.
Well, the Melbourne guys have called
merge
themselves
between technology, machine and man. Right?
the merge.
The merge.
Well, the Melbourne guys have
We
called
will
their
be assimilated.
I mean, instead of the tools being in our hands and operated by our feet and so on, we're actually getting them. They're actually starting to sort of merge with our bodies more and more directly.
Yeah.
Become
So
more
the Melbourne guys have called themselves the Science, Technology, and the Future group, like the meetup name, right? And it's very generalist, so people just they turn up to these things. But I find it's not driving the conversations like this. Like it's not taboo enough.
I'm saying don't change the name. I love it, but just be aware that it does, because you've got all these little lines on the board, and I think it can be a little bit confusing and misleading using that name, because it's moved on. The world's moved on.
I mean, it is a bit controversial calling it transhumanism. It suggests that we've become more than humans, or we'll become something other than human. If we become transhuman, it's sort of it's sort of like the other side of being human.
Human 2.0.
Human 2.0. I like to.
I think transhumanism does have quite a strong brand right now, especially because you've got a US presidential candidate who's part of the Transhumanist Party. You've got quite a strong transhumanist brand in Australia right now. I think it's part of a global brand at the moment. So I think there is some merit in keeping it as a transhumanism.
Oh, so that's interesting, right?
So I think you're still in the brand definition phase of transhumanism.
So what is it that we let's move on to this subject. The what should we do, right? Because we've been building the community for about a year now, but we're looking at saying, okay, what are the projects that we could be working on, and what are the things like branding or communication that we could do better? So what is it that we should do to get this into reality? I see what you guys.
Do you want to focus on advancing those computer science side of the things, or do you want to focus on advancing health sides of things? Because those are two very different attacks that are working on different parts of that first graph.
Well, would you want to go with something that was a little bit easier first? Like the Greens have gained power because they connected themselves with a major party. That's how they got in. And now they're actually gaining seats, and you don't even have to vote for Labour in order to get the Green seats anymore. So just as an example, is it easier to just sort of move into something that's like essentially going with what's in the news? As in picking something that is gaining traction and piggybacking off that, knowing that eventually you'll be able to get momentum.
We'll get to that, but we'll just want to follow through on the points that you made around AI or health, right? So you see in the news that the DeepMind has released a health division, and there's a whole what's in health. So I think that you're seeing, like James was saying, it's a convergence of those technologies. So AI is moving into biospace. So what is it that we can do to help that initiative?
Well, if you want your market to be big, like you talk about health.
Oh yeah.
Like because people are dying. Like a lot of people are dying.
Everyone's dripping behind not going blind.
120,000 people per year in Australia dead. Like it's important to have AI, and I think like you will get to health outcomes through AI. Like AI will discover from its genetic analysis like what the new drug is to cure cancer. But like the advertising aspect of it, like what can transhumanism do for you? Help you live a longer and healthier life. That's what it can do for you. I think a lot of within people in this scene, there are people who are really like, oh, computer AI is equivalent to human AI, and like people who aren't, and they're split down the middle. And I'm actually one of the people who say that it's not necessarily. In the community, no one even knows about AI, like computer AI as a conscious being, or even want that, I'd say.
I haven't picked up on this distinction you're making, James, between human AI and computer AI.
Can you just quickly go into that? Like what people disagree with?
Biological versus simulated computer artificial intelligence.
Oh, I guess sort of wet AI and
well, not necessarily.
And software. It's the argument between functionalism and non-functionalism.
So are you suggesting that we could create a human being other than by the usual sort of methods of
If you calculate all the possible calculations in the human brain, it comes down to about 20 petaflops of processing power, 20 petaflops per second.
That doesn't define a human.
A lot of processors. If you look at the top 500 supercomputer index, you'll see about 2 years ago they passed that 20 petaflop amount. Now, technically what that means is that one of the standard top-of-the-line supercomputers could now act as a human being in all ways, except for the physical side. They couldn't move. No, they could do the calculations required, and if Turing is correct, Church Turing, it means that it could turn any pattern, which is your input, into any other pattern, which is your output. So that there is technically no reason why that computer could not act as a conscious, intelligent human being. Doesn't mean it is, but it means it could act like one.
It looks very much like one.
It looks very much like one. You know,
most people are like that.
We might already
most people
be
act
like that.
that.
But the problem with that is that there's a couple of problems. Firstly, we don't know how to do it. We don't know the software to make it act in that way. So therefore, at this stage, we can't do it. They don't act in that way. They're getting better, but at the moment they don't. But of course, the underlying thing in Moore's law, of AI, is Moore's law. Moore's law is still going strong, and every 2 years, the computers are doubling in speed, which means you can do a hell of a lot of ugly stuff really quickly. And the big boom that we're seeing in AI at the moment is Moore's law, is really just the masses of cheap computers that are now available that we can throw at a problem. And we're getting better and better algorithms, but we're also going back to the past. But we do not know if those computers that just emulate us in physical hardware are conscious. They might act conscious, but we don't know if they actually have a true inner experience of being, which is of course the danger.
But you can't say that about any of us either.
I can say it about one of us.
Well, you can't say it about the rest of us.
That's correct.
Yes,
and I can assume it because you're built similar to me and you have a similar genesis. So I can say it's probable that you are similar to me. And also when I ask you, I say, what do you think about consciousness? Do you think consciousness is like a dish mop? And of course you say, no, it's an inner experience of being. It's a sense of self. It's introspectiveness. All those words, and they all click in my head, and I think, yeah, they're on the same zone as me. They see the problem in the definition of consciousness. It's a very hard thing to define. That's why it's called the hard problem. But
yeah. I just want to jump in because I feel like we've all made a really big assumption that is really not being addressed, which is the idea that people have choice and the assumption that we have free choice. No. The reason someone brought up cochlear implants, right? Does anyone know what it takes for is anyone here familiar with the deaf community?
With the what?
The deaf community. Deaf
Oh, right. Sorry. Took me a while.
No, people who actually speak sign language. Like,
we don't, because they don't.
No, but
yes,
it's
because I'm deaf.
no, like the idea that they have their own culture.
Okay.
Like they have their own culture.
So what?
They have their own sport. No, this is right. So what? So for example, when a child gets bored, for example, from hearing parents, okay, and then someone offers them a piece of equipment or chemotherapy and says to them, we are going to offer this to your child, but they cannot engage with this community that they were technically born into. Asking yourself these questions, because they can't learn sign language, they're not allowed to learn sign language for 3 years. They're not allowed to learn sign language, even though they're technically deaf, right? Because
they can, but the point about it is that the parents feel that, like, and this happens a lot, you have two deaf parents and they have great relationships, and then they have a kid who has good hearing, and that means that they're no longer communicating properly with the parents. It's like the same situation with like ESL families and stuff like that, where the kids are having troubles communicating with their parents and vice versa. Yeah. And by solving that technological problem, in some ways, some people feel like they're being marginalized because you're taking away from their culture. And it really is culture in a lot of ways, because their language is a huge part of culture, and you're taking away from the ability of the child, the probability that the child will engage deeply with that language. It would be like...
I don't understand what's the solution you're proposing.
No, what I'm saying is...
What's the treatment you're proposing to give the child or the parents?
Make them deaf.
No, the kid might be able to have a cochlear implant or something like that to prevent the deafness.
Yes, and they get it in...
I thought the example was two deaf parents and one...
No, that's what he's using. He's saying that it's
What's
a
your
similar
example
thing.
then?
My example is the idea of having two hearing parents give their child a cochlear implant.
Right.
It means that you diminish, like, for example, it means that the deaf community will eventually...
In other words, you're talking about, just an abstract term, you're talking about giving a deaf person full hearing, right?
Yes, and I'm talking about...
After they've grown up in a community of deaf people and a certain
No, it's that they have the possibility to. this child has the possibility to do that, and as a parent, you're taking that away from them, even though this community exists to support
Well,
them.
I've got the possibility too. I could have children and make them deaf, you know.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm.
Play with firecrackers too.
But to me, this is part of the idea. No, it's not. Because there are actually lots of people who employ philosophers only to ask themselves these questions. If we were to start making computerized AI, what should we tell them otherwise to make sure that we don't die? And that's the kind of questions that I think we should be answering, is looking at the things that are difficult, which is, how do you define somebody's choice? How do you let them choose to die? Stuff like that. How do you let them choose to be dead? How do you let them choose to not have something? You ask yourself these questions, and you have to. I think that that's what you should do. That was my introduction. And why don't you think we should do that? Your face is saying something else.
Well, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, take that.
I'm not saying. You know, all you can do is spell out the pros and cons of as much as you can of the options that are open to people, and then give them the choice. Isn't that?
But what if, for example, you were to indicate that they don't have a choice?
You wouldn't indicate that they don't.
Yes. What if you were to get, for example, that's what we live in at the moment. We live in a society that doesn't let you choose to die.
Exactly.
Why couldn't you have a society that in the
That's
future?
a rarity. It's a rarity that someone does actually choose to want. It's really 1 in a million, isn't it? That people.
It's a bit more
What's the
than that.
general population? Is that the population of
It's a bit more than that, but it is like. So I have friends whose grandparents and parents have died of cancer, and they've been like, kill me now, you know, this is horrible.
Sure.
So it does happen. It's not 1 in a million.
Sure, well, like,
but once again, my
the
grandmother,
thing is, if you could tell them, right, you either die or we fix you up fully to the way you were when you were 19,
Right.
which would you have?
Yeah.
And what if you choose not? This is my point. You have to be able to answer that question in order to move forward.
Well, okay, that's hypothetical.
Yes.
If you choose.
There are some people